Emily Carter stood frozen in the bright California sunlight, clutching a plain cardboard box that now held the last remnants of her identity. At 38, she had navigated countless challenges as a single mother and built a career she was proud of, climbing step by step into the comfortable middle class she'd always dreamed about. Yet in a single morning, everything had unraveled. Around her, colleagues quietly dispersed from the corporate headquarters, each carrying their own cardboard boxes filled with dreams now shattered. No one spoke. It felt like a funeral procession, except the only thing being buried here was hope. Emily forced herself to turn away from the glass-fronted building, the cold silver logo above mocking her years of devotion. Sliding the box onto the passenger seat of her aging sedan, Emily paused as her fingers brushed against an old framed photograph nestled among papers and awards. She picked it up gently. It showed her younger self, smiling brightly at Sophie's first birthday, carefree eyes shining, unaware of the difficult road ahead. Tears blurred her vision for a brief moment, but Emily quickly brushed them aside. Now wasn't the time. She had to hold herself together for Sophie's sake. As Emily drove home through the familiar San Francisco suburbs, her mind raced. Bills, mortgage payments, groceries, Sophie's violin lessons, all pressing urgently into her consciousness. Being a mother had always felt like walking a tightrope without a safety net, but losing her income completely was a fall she'd never anticipated. Emily's mother, Anna, who lived only a few blocks away, would surely offer help, but that would mean lectures, endless judgments about her life choices. Emily shuddered at the thought, gripping the wheel tighter. Pulling into her driveway, Emily noticed Sophie's bright pink bicycle lying carelessly in the grass, a sign of happier times. For a moment, Emily allowed herself to sit quietly in the car, heart pounding. She'd always believed her hard work could protect Sophie from the instability she herself had endured growing up. Now that illusion had collapsed, leaving Emily more vulnerable than she'd felt in years. Inside, Emily set the cardboard box on the kitchen table, its quiet presence looming ominously. Sophie was at the dining room table, finishing her math homework, her sandy blonde hair falling softly over her forehead. She looked up and smiled warmly, unaware her world had just shifted. "You're home early, Mom." Sophie's voice was cheerful, full of innocence Emily desperately wanted to preserve. "Yeah, honey, work was slow today," Emily lied weakly, forcing a smile. She moved toward the kitchen counter, fumbling with the coffee maker, her hands trembling slightly. Sophie studied her quietly, her 10-year-old eyes unusually perceptive. "Is everything okay?" Sophie asked softly, her brow furrowing in worry. Emily paused, gathering strength before turning back toward her daughter. "Sweetie, there's something I need to tell you. Mommy lost her job today." Sophie stared silently, absorbing the news. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't speak right away. Instead, she stood up quietly and approached Emily, hugging her tightly. "It's okay, Mom. You're really smart. You'll find something better." The tenderness in Sophie's gesture nearly broke Emily's resolve. She squeezed her daughter tighter, fighting back tears. "Thank you, sweetheart. I promise I'll do everything I can." That night, Emily tucked Sophie into bed, assuring her that nothing would change too dramatically. But after she'd closed Sophie's bedroom door softly behind her, Emily's facade quickly crumbled. Alone in the quiet living room, she began opening the cardboard box, carefully removing certificates, notebooks, and souvenirs from a career now vanished. At the very bottom, crumpled and faded, was an old handmade Mother's Day card Sophie had drawn years ago. Emily unfolded it gently, her breath catching as she read the simple words scrawled in careful, childish handwriting. "Mommy, you're stronger than Wonder Woman. I love you more than cupcakes. Love, Sophie." Emily smiled weakly, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. She'd spent so long trying to appear strong and capable, yet in this vulnerable moment, she felt anything but heroic. The simple, earnest belief Sophie once held seemed both precious and painfully distant. Suddenly, the phone buzzed loudly, jolting Emily from her quiet reflection. Glancing at the screen, she saw her mother's name flashing impatiently. Anna Carter never waited long before inserting herself into a crisis. Emily considered ignoring it, but after a moment's hesitation, reluctantly answered. "Hello, Mom." "Emily, I just saw on the news they're talking layoffs at your company. You weren't affected, were you?" Anna's voice was sharp, demanding immediate answers. Emily sighed deeply. Actually, yes, they let me go this morning. There was a brief, strained silence before Anna responded, her tone shifting quickly into stern practicality. Well, I told you years ago relying on those big corporations was risky. Anyway, we'll handle this. First thing tomorrow, you'll come over. I'll help you start applying for something more secure. You can't waste time feeling sorry for yourself, Emily. Emily bit her tongue, frustration simmering beneath her exhaustion. Mom, I appreciate your concern, but I can handle. Nonsense, Anna interrupted briskly. This isn't just about you. It's about Sophie. I'll expect you tomorrow morning. Before Emily could protest, the call ended abruptly. Her mother's words echoed painfully in the quiet room, reinforcing the guilt already eating away at her resolve. Maybe Anna was right. Maybe her choices had been selfish, putting Sophie's stability at risk. Emily closed her eyes, breathing deeply, trying to regain her center. Outside, darkness had settled quietly over the neighborhood, houses glowing warmly with lights each, family appearing secure and intact. Emily wondered if behind those closed doors, others were quietly unraveling too, each facing secret storms they hid from the world. Rising slowly, Emily moved toward Sophie's bedroom, pushing the door gently ajar. Her daughter slept peacefully, oblivious to the anxiety Emily now carried alone. She silently vowed, no matter what it took, Sophie would never experience the fear and instability she herself had endured as a child. Yet deep inside, Emily knew the storm had only begun, and the hardest battles were still ahead. The first month after losing her job passed in a haze of applications, rejections, and sleepless nights. Emily awoke each morning with hope, only for it to evaporate by evening beneath an avalanche of unanswered emails and polite dismissals. Her savings dwindled rapidly, and bills piled relentlessly, each envelope an urgent reminder of her failure to secure stability for Sophie. Emily soon began to feel the sting of isolation. Friends from her previous company grew distant, casual chats became awkward silences, lunch invitations ceased entirely, and LinkedIn messages went unanswered. It was as if her unemployment were contagious, a stigma others feared catching. Worst of all, Emily struggled with the quiet judgment of her mother, Anna. Each visit became increasingly tense, with Anna making pointed suggestions about positions Emily had dismissed as beneath her experience or pay grade. Their conversations grew shorter and sharper, leaving Emily feeling like an ungrateful child rather than an accomplished adult facing unforeseen hardship. One evening, while sitting alone in the dimly lit kitchen, Emily sifted through another round of rejection emails. She rubbed her temples, headache pounding, anxiety twisting her stomach into knots. The fridge was emptier than usual, stocked mostly with Sophie's favorite snacks. Emily herself had skipped dinner again. She startled as the phone rang, breaking her gloomy thoughts. Emily? The voice belonged to Sarah Mitchell, an old college friend she hadn't spoken to in years. I heard through some folks about your situation. I'm so sorry. Word spreads fast, Emily sighed, embarrassment creeping into her voice. I'm managing, sort of. Sarah paused softly, empathy clear in her tone. Listen, I'm not calling to pry. I run a community support center now, helping laid-off workers get back on their feet. We desperately need someone with your tech skills, even just part-time volunteering. It might help you too, emotionally at least. Emily hesitated, heart clenching painfully. Volunteer work sounded noble but completely impractical given her financial predicament. I appreciate the offer, Sarah, really, Emily replied carefully, voice shaking slightly. But honestly, I have bills due. Sophie needs things I can barely afford now. I need paid work. I understand, Sarah said gently, but sometimes staying connected and feeling useful opens doors. Just come by once. Even for a couple of hours, it might help more than you think. After hanging up, Emily leaned back heavily, conflicted. Volunteering felt irresponsible when she needed income desperately. But Sarah's offer tugged at something deeper within her, a craving not just for money, but for purpose and connection she hadn't realized she'd lost. The next afternoon, Emily hesitated briefly outside the modest brick community center, self-doubt swirling inside her. Yet stepping inside, she was immediately welcomed by Sarah's warmth and the hopeful, albeit anxious, smiles of strangers who shared her uncertainty. The atmosphere felt authentic, real, and somehow healing. Emily quickly found herself offering technical help to a young woman named Mia, recently unemployed and struggling to craft a resume. The gratitude in Mia's eyes when they finished filled Emily with unexpected satisfaction. Yet that small glow dimmed when she returned home to an eviction notice taped prominently to her front door. Hands trembling, Emily read the harsh words from the bank: foreclosure imminent unless payments were brought up to date. The paper slipped from her grasp, fluttering slowly to the floor. Sophie, emerging from her bedroom, noticed the despair on her mother's face. "Mom, what happened?" Sophie's voice shook slightly, sensing the severity of the moment. Emily quickly picked up the notice, forcing a reassuring smile. "Just a mistake, honey. I'll fix it, don't worry." But as Sophie retreated hesitantly to her room, Emily's heart shattered. She'd lied to protect her daughter, but the truth was becoming impossible to deny. She was losing control of everything. The next day, Emily reluctantly accepted an invitation from Anna, her mother, for breakfast. The meal quickly devolved into a tense conversation about Emily's choices. "I told you volunteering wasn't practical," Anna scolded sharply, frustration flaring. "You should have focused your energy on finding a real job, even if it meant lower pay or something outside your field." "Mom, I can't just abandon everything I've built," Emily countered angrily, fighting tears. "I worked so hard for years to give Sophie stability. If I accept any random job now, I'll lose everything I've worked toward." Anna sighed deeply, her tone softening slightly. "Honey, pride won't feed your child. Stability comes first. You need to wake up." Emily pushed back from the table abruptly, eyes stinging with tears. "Maybe stability doesn't have to mean misery, Mom. Maybe there's more to life than just surviving." Storming out of her mother's house, Emily returned home shaken. Deep down, she knew her mother's practicality wasn't entirely wrong, yet her heart resisted surrendering to that bleak logic. Still, reality quickly pressed upon her again, when another email popped onto her phone. An overdue reminder for Sophie's upcoming music tuition, a payment Emily couldn't cover this month. That night, exhausted and overwhelmed, Emily sat quietly beside Sophie's bed, watching her sleep peacefully, oblivious to the turmoil swirling around them. Tears spilled silently down Emily's cheeks as self-doubt clawed deeply within. Maybe her mother was right. Maybe her dreams of meaningful work had been naive. Perhaps she should abandon her idealism altogether and simply focus on survival, even if it meant sacrificing happiness. Yet Emily's gaze drifted across the room, landing again on another small drawing Sophie had taped beside her bed, a smiling stick figure with cape billowing proudly. Beneath it, the childishly scrawled words, "My mom, stronger than Wonder Woman." Emily drew a shaky breath, resolve strengthening slowly. Her daughter saw a strength in her that she herself had forgotten. But was that strength enough to carry them through? Outside, night had fallen gently, but inside Emily's heart, the storm raged fiercely, unresolved. Tomorrow, she knew, would require choices, harder than any she'd faced before. But tonight, Emily allowed herself just one small comfort, the hope that somehow, amid the chaos, she'd find the courage to become the woman her daughter already believed her to be. Weeks passed, each day deepening Emily's anxiety. Despite her determination, the flood of rejection emails felt relentless, chipping away steadily at her self-worth. Savings dwindled to alarming levels. Each overdue bill seemed louder than the last, reminding her harshly of promises broken, not only to herself but to Sophie. She continued volunteering at the community center, finding fleeting comfort in helping others. Mia, the young woman she'd first assisted, had recently secured a promising job thanks to Emily's guidance. Emily celebrated quietly, genuinely happy for Mia, yet haunted by her own stagnation. One afternoon, as she organized resumes at the center, Sarah approached carefully, holding out a printed email. "Emily, I think this is important." Emily glanced quickly at the paper, her heart racing. A job interview invitation from a prominent startup, with a salary and benefits exceeding even her previous role. The relief washing over her was powerful yet complicated. Finally, a real chance to regain stability, even though the company's demanding reputation was notorious. "That's incredible," Sarah smiled warmly, seeing Emily's conflicted expression. "You deserve this, Em," Emily nodded weakly. "It's great, Sarah. Exactly what I need." Yet that evening, while cooking dinner, the relief faded into apprehension. The position was demanding. Long hours, constant stress, minimal flexibility. Everything she'd hoped to avoid. But how could she turn down financial security for Sophie? Her thoughts were disrupted by loud shouting outside. She peered through the blinds and saw her neighbor Mark pacing frantically, phone in hand, face twisted in desperation. His voice carried sharply through the open window. "I have nothing left, Emily. Nothing. I've sent hundreds of applications. Nobody even notices me anymore." Emily's stomach tightened as she saw Mark collapse onto his front step, visibly shaking. She hurried outside and knelt beside him, gently placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Mark, talk to me," Emily urged softly. He shook his head hopelessly, tears falling openly now. "I can't do it anymore, Emily. I can't face my family. I failed them." Emily felt his anguish deeply, recognizing her own fears mirrored clearly in Mark's despair. She squeezed his hand firmly, her voice quiet, yet unwavering. "Mark, you're not a failure. You're more than a job or a paycheck." Mark looked up slowly, the raw vulnerability in his eyes breaking Emily's heart. "How do you know that? How do you keep believing when every door slams shut?" She sighed deeply, voice trembling slightly. "Honestly, some days I don't. Some days it feels impossible. But my daughter helps remind me that our worth goes deeper. We matter, even when the world tries to convince us otherwise." Mark grew calmer, exhaling heavily, nodding slowly. "Your daughter's lucky. But I don't know if I have that strength left." "You do," Emily assured gently. "You're not alone, Mark. We're all stronger together." After returning home that evening, shaken but deeply moved, Emily called her mother, attempting once more to share openly her internal struggle. "Mom, I'm afraid," she admitted quietly. "This new job offer could solve all my problems, but the thought of living under constant pressure again terrifies me." Anna's response was predictably pragmatic, though softer this time. "Emily, life isn't always about doing what feels comfortable. Stability matters. Think about Sophie's future first." Emily ended the call feeling conflicted. Later, as she tucked Sophie into bed, she noticed something troubling in her daughter's usually cheerful expression. Sophie's eyes avoided hers, voice unusually hesitant. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Emily asked softly. Sophie hesitated before speaking, eyes downcast. "Mom, are we losing our house? I heard you talking to Grandma last week." Emily's stomach dropped, heart breaking at Sophie's quiet fear. She gently hugged her daughter, speaking calmly despite internal panic. "We're going through a hard time, but I promise I'll do whatever it takes to protect us, okay?" Sophie nodded uncertainly, holding Emily tighter. "I trust you, Mom. I just don't want you to be unhappy again." Emily felt the heaviness of Sophie's words long after bedtime. Sitting alone in the kitchen, she stared blankly at the cardboard box from her office, still unopened in the corner. The choice before her felt impossible: financial safety or personal fulfillment. Security for Sophie's future, or happiness and balance in their daily lives. Later that night, Emily found herself staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. She remembered clearly her childhood, the endless stress, Anna's constant anxiety over money, stability prioritized above all else. Emily had sworn to provide something better for Sophie. But had her own pursuit of meaningful work endangered the very stability she swore to protect? At dawn, weary from sleeplessness, Emily made a painful decision. She would accept the high-paying job offer. Practicality had won. Dreams and idealism felt selfish now. But just as she began typing an acceptance email, the phone rang abruptly, Sarah's voice filled with urgency. "Emily, I need your help." Mark's wife called. "He's missing. They had a big fight. He left a note, Emily. It's serious." Emily's heart skipped, panic overtaking exhaustion. Without hesitation, she grabbed her keys, rushing out into the night. As she drove frantically toward Mark's house, she realized painfully how close they all were to the edge. The job offer suddenly felt meaningless against the reality of Mark's desperation, mirroring fears Emily herself had wrestled with for weeks. Arriving at Mark's house, seeing the frantic worry in his wife's eyes, Emily knew with certainty her journey was far from simple, far from resolved. The night grew darker, the neighborhood silently witnessing their shared struggle. Emily felt a new resolve rising inside her, not driven by practicality or idealism alone, but by something deeper. They would find Mark, together. And in doing so, perhaps she could also find the clarity she'd lost. Emily no longer chased shadows alone. She now walked firmly into the storm, embracing uncertainty and purpose simultaneously. Emily gripped the steering wheel tightly as she pulled into Mark's driveway, her heart hammering against her ribs. The front porch light flickered weakly, illuminating Mark's wife, Lisa, who stood wrapped in a thin cardigan, arms crossed against the cold. Her eyes were puffy, dark circles betraying exhaustion and worry. "He left over an hour ago," Lisa murmured, her voice unsteady. "I found his note by the coffee maker. He didn't say much, just that he was sorry." Emily swallowed hard, a sharp pang twisting in her chest. She had seen Mark unraveling for weeks, but she hadn't realized just how deep his despair had run. "Did he take his car?" Emily asked, scanning the dimly lit street. Lisa shook her head. "No, he just walked out." 1,000 possibilities raced through Emily's mind, each one darker than the last. She had felt the weight of hopelessness before, the gnawing fear that you are failing the people who need you the most. But tonight, that fear was no longer just an internal battle. It was a very real, tangible danger. "I'll look for him," Emily said firmly. "Stay here in case he comes back." Lisa nodded weakly. "Please, if you find him, just tell him we love him. We need him." Emily's breath hitched slightly, but she nodded, stepping back toward her car. She didn't have a plan, just a growing urgency that propelled her forward. As she drove slowly through their quiet suburban streets, scanning sidewalks and benches, she thought about the decision she had been so sure of just hours earlier. The job offer had felt like the only answer to her financial fears, the only way to regain control of her life. But sitting behind the wheel now, she realized that no paycheck, no corporate title could compare to the simple, raw necessity of human connection. 15 minutes into her search, Emily spotted a familiar figure sitting alone on a park bench near the empty baseball field. She pulled over quickly, cutting the engine. Mark sat slumped forward, hands clasped together, shoulders trembling slightly. Emily approached slowly, her voice gentle. "Mark." He didn't look up. She sat beside him, waiting a few moments before speaking again. "Lisa's worried sick. She loves you. She just wants you home." Mark let out a hollow laugh, shaking his head. "Home? I don't even know what that means anymore. I have nothing left to give, Emily." Emily inhaled deeply, choosing her words carefully. "That's not true." Mark finally turned to look at her, his eyes bloodshot, full of exhaustion and defeat. "I tried everything, sent out hundreds of applications. No one even bothers to respond. It's like I don't exist." Emily understood that feeling all too well. "I know how it feels," she admitted. "Like the world moved on without you, like you're invisible." Mark nodded slowly. "Yeah, exactly." Emily hesitated, then spoke honestly. "But you're not invisible to the people who love you. You're not invisible to Lisa. To your kids. You're not invisible to me." Mark exhaled shakily, rubbing his hands over his face. "I don't know how to fix this." "You don't have to fix everything tonight," Emily said softly. "You just have to come home." For a long moment, Mark said nothing. But then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. Emily let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Come on," she said gently. "Let's get you back." By the time they pulled into Mark's driveway, Lisa was already waiting by the door. She rushed forward as soon as Mark stepped out of the car, wrapping her arms tightly around him. Emily stood back, watching as Mark clung to his wife, his quiet murmurs barely audible. Relief settled in her chest, but exhaustion pressed down on her shoulders. As she turned to leave, Mark called out to her, "Emily." She turned back, surprised to see the gratitude in his tired eyes. "Thank you." She smiled faintly. "We all need someone to remind us that we matter." The weight of a decision that night, Emily sat at her kitchen table, the job offer email still open on her laptop screen. A month ago, she would have accepted it immediately. A few hours ago, she had been ready to compromise, to trade meaning for security. But after tonight, after looking into Mark's eyes and seeing the reflection of her own past despair, she felt a shift. She no longer wanted a job that would take her away from everything she had fought so hard to reclaim. Emily closed her laptop. Instead of replying to the email, she reached for her phone and dialed Sarah's number. "Hey," Sarah answered groggily. "Everything okay?" Emily took a steady breath. "I think I finally know what I want." Silence stretched between them before Sarah spoke again, her voice carrying quiet understanding. "Tell me," Emily exhaled. "I want to stay at the center, but I need to make it work financially." There was a pause, then Sarah spoke carefully. "Emily, I was going to wait to bring this up, but we've been discussing adding a full-time role. It wouldn't be as much as your corporate salary, but it would be stable." Hope flared in Emily's chest. "You're serious?" Sarah chuckled. "Yeah, I just wasn't sure if you'd be interested. But if you are, I'll make the call first thing in the morning." Emily smiled, emotion tightening in her throat. "I'm interested." As she ended the call, Emily felt something she hadn't in a long time. Certainty. She wasn't just chasing a paycheck anymore. She was chasing purpose. Emily woke up the next morning with an unfamiliar feeling, clarity. It wasn't relief exactly, because she knew challenges still lay ahead. But for the first time in weeks, she felt like she was making a decision based on what truly mattered, rather than what fear dictated. After dropping Sophie off at school, she drove straight to the community center. As soon as she stepped inside, the air buzzed with quiet activity. Job seekers hunched over applications, volunteers offering quiet encouragement, the steady hum of whispered hope. Sarah greeted her with a knowing smile. "You ready?" Emily took a deep breath and nodded. "Yeah, let's do this." They spent the morning discussing the details of the full-time position. The salary was, as expected, significantly lower than her old corporate job. It wouldn't be easy. She would have to budget meticulously, cut unnecessary expenses, and likely take on freelance work for extra income. But for the first time in a long while, the trade-off felt worth it. A mother's doubt that afternoon, Emily sat across from her mother at their usual diner, stirring her coffee absently. Anna watched her daughter carefully, sensing that something had shifted. "All right," Anna finally said, setting down her teacup. "You're making a decision about work, aren't you?" Emily nodded slowly. "I accepted a job at the community center." Anna's expression didn't change, but Emily knew her well enough to sense the disappointment behind her neutral tone. "You mean the volunteer place?" "It's not volunteer anymore," Emily corrected. "It's full-time, a real job, Mom." Anna exhaled slowly. "Emily, I know you want to help people, but you have to think about Sophie. This job doesn't offer the kind of stability you need. What about your mortgage, medical insurance, college savings?" "I've thought about all of that," Emily assured her, "and I know it won't be easy. But I also know that I don't want to go back to a job that drains the life out of me." Anna frowned, stirring her tea more forcefully. "Honey, you're acting like stability is a bad thing. Life isn't about chasing passion. It's about making sure your child never has to struggle." Emily's jaw tightened. "Mom, I watched you sacrifice everything for stability. I watched you work yourself to exhaustion in jobs you hated just so we could keep the lights on. And yes, I appreciate what you did, but I also saw what it did to you." Anna's eyes darkened, but she said nothing. Emily continued, her voice softer now. "I don't want to just survive, Mom. I want to live, and I want Sophie to see that's possible." Anna let out a quiet sigh, shaking her head. "I just don't want you to regret this choice." Emily met her mother's gaze evenly. "I won't." They sat in silence for a long moment before Anna finally reached over and squeezed Emily's hand. "Then I hope you're right." It wasn't exactly approval, but it was something. Facing the numbers that evening, Emily sat at the kitchen table with a notepad, listing out every expense she could think of: mortgage, utilities, food, Sophie's violin lessons, health insurance. She ran the numbers carefully, chewing her lip in concentration. Even with the new job, things would be tight, too tight. Her phone buzzed, breaking her focus. It was a text from Sarah. "Call me when you get a chance. I might have a lead for you." Curious, Emily dialed immediately. Sarah picked up on the first ring. "So, I was talking to a friend who runs a local nonprofit. They need someone to build a website and set up some basic IT systems. It wouldn't be a full-time job, but it's flexible and pays decently. I thought of you." Emily's pulse quickened. How much are we talking? Sarah named a figure that wasn't huge, but enough to fill the gap in Emily's budget. Relief washed over her. I'll take it. Telling Sophie later that night, Emily sat on the edge of Sophie's bed, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. I have some news, sweetheart. Sophie blinked sleepily. What is it? I got a new job. Sophie's eyes lit up. Really? Where? At the community center, Emily said. It won't be as much money as before, but I think I'll be a lot happier. Sophie considered this carefully before nodding. That's good, Emily smiled. Yeah? Yeah, Sophie said simply. I just didn't like when you were sad all the time before. Emily's throat tightened. Me neither, sweetheart. Sophie yawned, curling into her blankets. Will we still have movie nights? Always. Sophie grinned sleepily. Then I think it's a good job. Emily kissed her forehead, her heart full. Me too. Packing away the past the next morning, before heading to her first official day at the community center, Emily walked to the garage. The old cardboard box still sat in the corner, untouched for weeks. She lifted the lid, fingers brushing over the old framed photograph of herself and Sophie from years ago. Beneath it, at the very bottom, lay Sophie's crumpled handmade Mother's Day card. Mommy, you're stronger than Wonder Woman. Emily smiled softly, tears pricking her eyes. Carefully, she picked up the box, carrying it to the hallway closet. She placed it on the top shelf, not throwing it away, but not letting it define her anymore. She wasn't the same woman who had carried that box out of her office all those months ago. She was stronger now, and she was finally free. Emily's first official day as an employee of the community center felt strangely surreal. She had walked into countless office buildings throughout her career, gleaming high-rises with polished floors, sterile cubicles, and hushed conversations. But stepping into the modest center, filled with the quiet hum of people trying to rebuild their lives, she felt something she hadn't in a long time: belonging. Sarah greeted her with a warm smile as she walked in. Ready for your first day as an official team member? Emily grinned, the nerves in her stomach settling slightly. As ready as I'll ever be. She spent the morning working with clients, helping them update resumes and apply for jobs online. But unlike before, when her own job search had been filled with loneliness and desperation, here she was part of something bigger. Every person who walked through the doors carried a story, a struggle, and now a bit of hope. It wasn't just about work. It was about reminding people, including herself, that they still had value. An unexpected offer later that afternoon. As Emily organized paperwork in the small office she now shared with Sarah, the phone rang. Sarah picked up, listening for a few moments before glancing at Emily with raised eyebrows. It's for you. Emily hesitated before taking the receiver. This is Emily. A familiar voice greeted her, one she hadn't expected to hear again. Emily, it's David Lawson from Evertech. We met during your interview. Emily sat up straighter, confusion flickering through her. Oh, hi, David. I wasn't expecting to hear from you. Well, David chuckled, we weren't expecting to reach out again either, but after reviewing our candidates, we'd like to extend an offer. Emily's breath caught. You're offering me the job? Yes, and with an even better salary package than before. Emily swallowed hard. It was everything she had wanted a month ago. Security, benefits, a prestigious title. Yet now, the offer didn't fill her with excitement. Instead, it felt like a door she wasn't sure she wanted to walk through anymore. David continued, I know you were weighing your options before, but we'd love to have you on board. If it's a financial concern, we're open to discussing further incentives. Emily's fingers tightened around the phone. Just weeks ago, she would have taken this job without hesitation. But now, she thought of Sophie, of the way her daughter had hugged her tighter these past few weeks, sensing her mother's peace. She thought of Mark, of the people at the center who had reminded her that she wasn't alone in this struggle. And she thought of herself, the woman she was becoming, not just surviving but choosing. Taking a steady breath, Emily spoke with clarity she never thought she'd have in this moment. I truly appreciate the offer, David, but I'm going to have to decline. Silence. You're sure? David finally asked, his voice tinged with surprise. Emily smiled, nodding to herself. Yes. I've found something that fits my life better. David exhaled, then chuckled lightly. Well, I can't say I expected that, but I respect it. If you ever change your mind, my door is always open. Thank you, David, Emily said sincerely before hanging up. She let out a slow breath, feeling lighter than she had in years. Sarah, who had clearly been eavesdropping, leaned against the desk with a smirk. You turned down Evertech? Emily nodded. Yeah, I did. Sarah grinned. Damn, I'm proud of you. Emily laughed softly. Me too. A new kind of success that evening. Emily and Sophie curled up on the couch, a bowl of popcorn between them, watching an old animated movie they had seen a dozen times before. Halfway through, Sophie turned to her, resting her head against Emily's arm. You seem happier now, Sophie said quietly. Emily kissed the top of her daughter's head. I am. Sophie smiled. Good. I like it when you laugh more. Emily's throat tightened with emotion. She had spent so long measuring success in numbers, promotions, and salaries. But here, in this small, quiet moment, she realized success wasn't just about how much money she made. It was about peace, purpose, choosing a path that made her feel whole. For the first time since she walked out of her office carrying that cardboard box, Emily wasn't afraid of the future. She was building it on her own terms. And she was finally free. Final scene in the dim glow of the living room. Sophie fell asleep against Emily's shoulder, breathing softly. Emily glanced toward the hallway, where the closet door was slightly ajar. Inside, on the top shelf, sat the last cardboard box she had carried out of her old life. She smiled to herself. She wouldn't need it anymore, and that was Emily's story. A woman who once believed that her worth was tied to a stable job, a steady paycheck, and a predictable life. But when all of that was taken away, she was forced to ask herself the most important question: who am I without these things? Through struggles, heartbreak, and difficult choices, Emily discovered that true success isn't just about financial stability or societal approval. It's about living with purpose, choosing fulfillment over fear, and finding the courage to define her own path. Many of us have been in Emily's shoes. Maybe you've faced an unexpected job loss, financial hardship, or the pressure to conform to what others expect of you. Maybe, like Emily, you've had to make a difficult decision, one that meant choosing happiness over security. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about Emily's journey? Do you relate to any of the struggles she faced? How do you feel about the choices she made? Comment 2 if you liked this story, and 7 if it didn't resonate with you. And most importantly, share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters, and I would love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to Sophia's Revenge Stories. I share new thought-provoking and emotional stories every day. Stories that speak to the challenges, triumphs, and resilience of women in today's world. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.